Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Looks like we have enough staff members here, so we can call the meeting to order at 6:45 p.m. And the first thing that I wanted to address is we're gonna talk about the CC4A thing tonight, and instead about a grant that she wants to pursue. So we will change out that first action item. The first thing on our agenda is a presentation from Zach Swank from the Boulder County Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience. So Zach, if you want to introduce yourself and take it away.
Hey, everybody. I am Zach Swank, as mentioned. I'm the Deputy Director of the Sustainability Office, and I oversee our building decarbonization work within our team, as well as a handful of other things. Thanks for the invite to be here tonight. I'm going to be talking about an analysis we've done looking at our 2021 greenhouse gas inventory, of which Leah, you now have the results for Nederland. Is that right? You got those from us?
Oh, I didn't share the draft with everyone because it seemed like it maybe totally done, and this would be a better format.
Yeah. But you have the Nederland 2021 greenhouse gas inventory data file, right?
Leah Yancey shared the full data set, but she said it was not quite digestible, and she was going to put together a better summary for Nederland at a later date.
All right. Well, stay tuned for that. So I'll be talking about the countywide inventory results and the county government's goals for the county as a whole, including Nederland. But obviously, we don't have, we only have jurisdictional control over unincorporated parts of Boulder County. But our office takes a expansive view to our work that isn't limited just to the unincorporated parts of Boulder County that are unincorporated, and we provide services to every municipality within the county. And so when I'm speaking about the county this evening, I will be speaking specifically about the county government's goals, but when I talk about our services, I'll be speaking about the entire county, including Nederland. So without further ado, let me share my screen here. And now I've lost you all. There you are. Again. Now I can see everybody again. So what you're looking at now is the results of the greenhouse gas inventories that the county has done, again, for the county as a whole, including all of Nederland, from 2005, 2011, 2016, and 2021. And then the gray dot and gray line represent the county's goal of an 80% reduction from 2021 levels by 2030. And we base that goal on the science-based targets around what we need to do as a globally affluent community compared to a lot of the rest of the world, and our responsibility for avoiding the worst impacts of climate change. So a couple things to draw from here. Pretty slow progress, 2005 to 2016, of course. Improvement 2016 to 2021. However, we know that there's a significant COVID effect there. We can really see it in our transportation emissions. So I think absent COVID, you would see the 2021 emissions being quite higher. And then a long way to go here from 2030. I don't think that this is probably news to anybody in this committee that we got a long ways to go to do what we need to do to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. But I think particularly why Leah invited me here tonight is to talk about an analysis that I did from this data and said, okay, we've got this gap, between 2021 and 2030, and what would it take to close that gap? So we're going to spend a lot of time on this slide, we'll have time to digest it, but let's focus just on this first bar. This first bar represents the countywide emissions inventory for 2021. So the biggest source of emissions was electricity, followed by methane gas, aka natural gas, mobile gasoline, land use, industrial uses, aviation, and then the rest of the uses, landfill methane, mobile diesel, oil and gas wells, etc., comprise smaller amounts. So the second bar represents my estimation of a challenging but achievable 2030 outcome. And this assumes that we have 30% of the vehicles on the road, not just 30% of new vehicle sales, and not just 30% of vehicles owned by Boulder County residents, but 30% of the vehicles on Boulder County roads are EVs. Right now, we are at 3% of vehicles owned by Boulder County residents are EVs. So 30% is quite ambitious by 2030 from there. It is also our currently stated goal for the county of what we'd like to see. This also models 30% electrification of homes. So 30 more percentage points of homes transition off methane gas as a heating source or propane and onto electrification. If you look at this, we're going from a little over 4 million metric tons down to 2.5 million metric tons. That's a pretty significant drop, but that is not an 80% reduction. In order to get to an 80% reduction, we would need to have what is that third bar chart that's quite short, and that represents a 90% reduction in methane gas use, a 90% reduction in mobile gas use, a 90% reduction in electricity emissions, a 50% reduction in our land use and industrial uses, and I think maybe a 50% reduction in aviation as well. So getting to 90% reduction in methane use, we're looking at 100% electrified homes and buildings. So that's like every structure within Boulder County boundaries would need to be primarily heating with electric. Obviously, talking Nederland here, all electric, it may not be the right choice for everybody. And so, we anticipate that, for the long-term future here, there will continue to be some fossil fuel heating use in homes. But that far right bar chart just represents, again, what it would take to get to an 80% reduction goal. Also, the mobile gas use, that's a 90% reduction in mobile gas use. So that means every vehicle on the road that are owned by Boulder County residents and that are of people driving through Boulder County pretty much would need to be electric by 2030. Obviously, neither of these things are going to happen. There's just, it's not going to happen. It's too short a time frame. It is what a science-based target would say that we need to achieve to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, but it's not achievable, unfortunately. So then the question is, how can we achieve it, and how soon can we achieve it after 2030? And I have a series of strategies that I've compiled, looking at that question that we can go over, but I want to pause here and just ask if there's any questions, comments, reactions. Really? Nothing?
Stunned
All right, just
depression.
feel good. Zach, here's one of my questions is you talk about aviation. What does that entail? Is that any flights that like go over Boulder County? Is it just things that are out of the Boulder airport? What's involved there?
Yeah, a more precise and accurate answer would come from Leah Yancey in our office, but I do know that aviation includes the Boulder County portion of DIA aviation. I don't know exactly how that was arrived at, but you take, I assume maybe they took the percentage of Boulder County population in relation to the state population and the overall aviation in and out of DIA and assigned some emissions therein. It's probably a little more accurate than that, but it's something like that. So no, it's not just out of, say, the airport in the city of Boulder. Christopher, do you have a question?
No, just thinking on the fact that clearly, what science says we need to do is not what we're doing, and so, as usual.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I've been a real Debbie Downer to be around since I did this analysis, and also, like it's not really surprised anybody. Like intuitively we knew this. It shocked me a little bit, or maybe a lot of bit, to realize just how far away we are. But that's where we are. All right, I'm going to, and if anybody has any questions here on out, just feel free to chime in and interrupt me. I will stop sharing and switch documents here. Apologies for just sharing this as a Word document, but it is a 30-page Word document with a lot of different strategies. And there's not really a PowerPoint friendly way to cover this much text. Don't worry, I won't be reading it. We're just going to get the Cliff Notes version here. We are working on, I'll share the document now on screen. We're working on a version of this document to distribute more widely. It's currently under our attorney's review, which I'll talk about why in a second here. But I'm happy to share it visually with you now and talk through it, and then it should be a couple of weeks here. We can get the document with you or to you. All right, so this goes over basically what I already covered with you, where we're at with our emissions, and where we need to be, and that modeling of what it would take. Again, that model is just an illustrative model. It doesn't have to be 90% reduction in mobile gas. You could, make other changes elsewhere that would change that percentage. But I just took the major sources and kept reducing them down until I got to an 80% reduction. So, and then this document, we go over new construction strategy and existing building strategy. There's a lot in here. I'm going to bounce back and forth between the content and the table of contents here, sort of as our guide as we go through briefly here. So again, you've seen this. These are the charts I just showed you. So one of the Let me make this a little bit bigger. So an important foundational thing here is what's in the pink highlight here, with my comment to our attorney of, is it okay if we distribute this to the public? Because it's based on our legal analysis of the 1975 Energy Conservation or Energy Policy and Conservation Act. I need to switch this. Which states that no state regulation concerning the energy efficiency, energy use, or water use of such covered product will be effective with respect to such product, which is legalese and legislative text of saying only the federal government can set efficiency standards. And the reason that that got passed in 75 is that they didn't want each town or city or state having different efficiency standards for, say, a clothes washer. That would create sort of a mess for manufacturers to comply with. And so they said, you know what, really, it should be one centralized standard across the country, which makes a lot of sense. Where it makes less sense in our modern age is that it has been interpreted as also prohibiting any state or local government from saying things like Berkeley did, where they had a ban on gas in new construction. And so the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck that down and said that this law prevents Berkeley from doing that. There was a similar ruling in Albuquerque about a similar proposal that they had. So that is something that is a background for what can be done here. I'm going to jump. So okay. Well, let's talk about new construction, and I will just go back to the table of contents here. So, Leah, did Nederland participate in the regional code cohort for new construction?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So a bunch of Boulder County municipalities plus Broomfield, I think Westminster, maybe a couple others, last year before, got together and worked together to establish some goals on adoption of electrification supportive policies for transportation electrification and home electrification and new construction. And they came up with this roadmap of adopting the most recent codes and then electric ready, et cetera. So that roadmap is here in this document, which is pictured here. Oh yeah, this would answer if Nederland did. On adoption of 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, where they're at with EV ready adoption, solar ready, or electric preferred, et cetera. So that process for those communities who are on that cycle largely covers the strategy for electrification of new construction. As you can see here, there's a plan for, actually, if I go up one, this is what I wanted to show. For residential, for example, covers the plan for electrification in the code adoption cycles. So one of the purposes of doing this code cohort is that rather than have a patchwork of different communities being on different cycles, let's all try and get lined up and make things a little bit easier and more consistent for our homeowners and our home builders, as well as commercial buildings. And so there's a plan that communities have agreed to individually adopt, but generally all in the same time frame for commercial buildings as well. So in a sense, provided that everybody follows through on that, that largely across the county takes care of the new construction piece of this puzzle. Obviously not in the time frame that we need, because we already need every building. We pretty much already need to be have every building electrified, or at least within the next 6 years it needs to happen. And we're not building all new buildings in the next 6 years. But it is a reasonable and still aggressive path to working towards building electrification and EV readiness in our commercial and residential new construction. So lots more to still do there in terms of actually implementing those things and implementing them in a way that meets the challenges of the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. But that sort of general strategy and timetable is been sorted out as a model with the regional code cohort. So that leaves the much bigger challenge of existing buildings. Oh, Leah, I saw you on mute.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add that even though Nederland didn't participate in that cohort, we are in the process of updating our building codes for solar and electrification. So we'll basically follow the guidance of that cohort in Boulder County specifically.
Right, and thank you for that. And one of the reasons we wanted to do the cohort was it just so exactly what Leah said is possible. We wanted to have this plan sorted out here with enough different jurisdictions that it would likely work for others. And so even if they didn't participate in the cohort, we still had something that was adoptable. And so so no worries on not participating in the cohort. We had in mind and hoped that you would do exactly what you're doing. So it's perfect, right on track. So existing buildings, quite a bit more challenging, of course. I'm not going to read through all of these strategies in detail, but a couple of things I want to highlight are some of the guiding principles. So as a department, and I think just generally probably many of us in this work, we are seeking to center our work on equity and racial justice. We are also looking for large-scale systems level change, electrifying every vehicle in every home in the county is not a one by one. I mean, it does need to happen individually to each one, but in terms of thinking about how we accomplish this, we do not and will never have the capacity in, say, our residential energy smart program or our commercial Partners for a Clean Environment program to meet individually with every homeowner or every commercial business owner or building owner. And tackle each one by one. So we need sort of these, how do we facilitate large scale shifts? And also, we can't do this without the community. Ultimately, it is community members and business owners that are making these decisions. And so we should and must engage the community in here. In terms of approach, I don't have a graphic in here, but that's okay. You're stuck with a lot of text. We are following a principle called targeted universalism. And the basic idea is you take a universal goal, say 100% building electrification, and you have different targeted strategies for different populations within that goal. For example, if we take a universal goal, if we want every kid to graduate high school, some kids are going to need free and reduced lunch because they struggle with food insecurity and it's difficult to learn while you're hungry. Not all the kids are going to need that. Some kids are going to need gifted and talented or AP classes to keep them engaged because they're advanced for their age. But not all kids are going to need that. Some kids are going to need remedial education in some areas, but not all kids are going to need that. So if you just say, we want everybody to graduate high school and we're going to provide this one thing to everybody this one way, obviously that's not going to yield good outcomes. It'll work well for a small segment of the population, but not everyone. And so we are taking that same approach to our work around electrification, where it's not going to be a rebate program that works for everybody. We're going to need more targeted solutions, and different solutions, say for manufactured homeowners, which are a different structure and require different building science solutions than, say, a single family home, as well as multifamily is going to need different solutions as well. So that's how we're approaching this. And historically, our legacy programs, Energy Smart on the residential side and Partners for a Clean Environment, or PACE on the commercial side, they have historically been fairly monolithic, where we offered rebates and advising, and that was it. But it's very clear looking back that there are clear segments of our population for whom those two things just don't work for. And so we're working on increasing our low-income services, our turnkey services. We're working on increasing the support we're providing to small businesses, et cetera. So jumping back to our list of strategies here, we'll stay on this list for a while here. Again, let me just go into, I'll click into a couple of them so you can see sort of what's in the plan. It's not terribly detailed. There are no, let's make that gray go away. There are no silver bullets to this, of course. If there were, we would have already implemented them. So, on the equity theme, mitigating, more thought and programmatic attention and details need to go into mitigating housing cost increases for renters, as well as upfront and operating costs for low income and other historically marginalized homeowners and businesses. So that's those are two sort of broad arching things that we're working on across sort of all of the other strategies. The strategies that follow, I'm confident not all of them will be implemented. Perhaps only very few of them will be implemented, but they are my attempt at an all-encompassing overview of the types of things that would get us eventually to all electric buildings. So building performance requirements, energy use intensity targets, there already is a state building performance standard in place. We could look at, and that only applies to buildings over 50,000 square feet. We could look at, communities in Boulder County taking that model and applying it to buildings that are smaller than 50,000 square feet. Pushing for all air conditioning to be heat pumps, because heat pumps provide air conditioning. They both heat and cool. Pushing for all air conditioning to be heat pumps is one entry point into getting heat pumps in homes. If you're adding air conditioning, it may as well be a heat pump. There's only a marginal incremental cost in many instances over just putting in a new AC unit versus putting in a heat pump. Pushing for all new water heaters to be electric resistance or heat pump. So on end of equipment life, when you need to replace one, pushing for that to be replaced with a heat pump. Pushing for electrification at the end of space heating equipment life, so furnace, boilers, etc. All of these things come with challenges. One of the challenges there, of course, is if it's an emergency replacement, which they often are in our homes. It's a very cold day. That's when things tend to fail. You can't wait for 2 weeks for the right piece of equipment to be available, or to figure out what the right piece of equipment is. So there's lots of challenges to solve there, including having much more equipment stocked, having more contractors more familiar with the technology, and a lot of things that would need to fall into place before something like having that happen would be reasonable. Electrification at time of building sale. Many homeowners in Boulder County have some pretty significant property appreciation at the time they sell their buildings. And there's an opportunity there to use some of that equity to electrify buildings in that moment. However, many property owners also have that appreciation, but are also fixed income. And I think of my old neighbor, an elderly woman who, had been in her home a long time, and recently had to move into assisted living, and so she sold her home. But assisted living is very expensive, and she needed all of the proceeds from the sale of her home to be able to cover her move into assisted living. So there's clearly challenges with that strategy as well. Pushing for electrification during major remodels. If you're already doing significant building upgrades, that can be a more cost-effective time to include electrification in the project. Pushing for electrification of rental properties. Again, that's just another strategy. Gas infrastructure pruning. So there is an example of this hopefully coming up. In Boulder along Pearl Street, there's an aging gas line that either needs to be replaced or abandoned. And so City of Boulder, Boulder County, and Xcel Energy are collaborating on a project over the next couple of years to work with the businesses and residents in downtown on, can we just abandon that gas line and electrify these buildings instead? And Xcel's initial analysis is that doing that, going all electric, would ultimately cost them less, even with providing incentives to electrify the buildings, than replacing the gas line. Now, that's a particular scenario with lots of challenges with their current infrastructure, with meters in basements when they're supposed to be outside the building, and the fact that Pearl Street and the alleyways are all bricked up, and other particular challenges to that area. But that's an example of gas infrastructure pruning. Rather than looking at replacing a line of gas infrastructure, can we just electrify instead? Incentives, that's definitely the biggie one. That is certainly the most welcome and palatable strategy. However, it would cost somewhere in the range of, let's say, $5 billion with a B dollars to electrify every home in Boulder County. That is not that is not a level of incentive that we can provide, and nor should we, provide the full cost there. Right? Like, our governments are not on the hook currently to pay for the replacement of heating systems or hot water heaters in every home. But in terms of encouragement and incentive, it would take a lot of money for that to be an effective strategy in and of itself. We're also looking at our internal staff capacity. We have 300,000 people living in Boulder County, and we have 2 energy smart advisors working to advise residents on how to insulate and air seal and electrify their homes. That ratio does not really work out. So we need to look at both at, what is the right size for, sustainability staff to enable these things to happen, and also we can't just staff up to solve this problem. We really need to look at, again, back to those large scale system change solutions. One-on-one advising, having enough staff to do one-on-one advising with every resident, every homeowner, is not a feasible solution here. We also need more workforce development. One of our biggest challenges that we see to electrification is just having enough contractors to do the work who are trained and who are interested in electrification. There's enough demand out there and few enough contractors that if a HVAC contractor doesn't want to work in heat pumps, they still have plenty of work to do. And so we need to work on that problem as well. We also need to educate homeowners and businesses on the need and benefits, not only to the climate, but for indoor air quality and home comfort. And I'm just looking at the time here. I realize I've gone over my 30 minutes, but we're there. We're at the end. I'll just close with there are a couple of other solutions on here. Or I should say potential solutions. But if there is anything close to a silver bullet, it lies in state and public utilities commission policy. That's where we get those large scale system change solutions. And so that's definitely a key component of these strategies as well. So Leah, sorry for going over. I don't know if we have time for any more questions. I was not keeping a close enough watch on the time.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we have time for questions.
Okay.
Zach, could you speak to the incentives that recently came out through the Inflation Reduction Act and how those might fit into this targeted universalism, the impact they might have?
Yeah, for sure. So specifically the residential incentives, which Rewiring America has a very good calculator that you can enter in your address, and it'll tell you what and some other quick details, and it'll tell you what incentives might be available to you. There are two programs in there that a lot of people are very excited about. One is called Homes, and the other is called HEEHRA. Which I like to call hurrah. But one of those programs provides incentives to low-income homeowners based on a percentage of energy use reduction. And the other program provides fixed incentives, well, in theory, provides fixed incentives up to $14,000 for homeowners who are at 80% of area median income or below. Those things are awesome. They're very equity focused and fit, well, I should say could fit depending on how they're implemented within that targeted universalism approach. But it helps for a start that they're focused on low and median income. If you make up to 150% of AMI, you can also qualify for some of those incentives. In Boulder County, up to 150% of AMI includes people making six figures because we're Boulder County. So that's all great news and fantastic. The challenge to this is the state of Colorado's, so that money is getting given out by the Department of Energy to states to administer. So those funds will be administered by the Colorado Energy Office here in Colorado. And Colorado is receiving $140 million between those two programs, which is quite a lot of money. But if you consider that those programs on paper can go up to $14,000 per homeowner, 140 million divided by 14,000, you're looking at 10,000 homes across all of Colorado. Is that true? No, you're looking at, you're looking at not that many homes across Colorado. And so a lot of people are really excited about those programs, as they rightly should be. But the reality is we are anticipating much disappointment across the state that those funds will not go nearly as far as and go to as many homeowners as people are anticipating, or that you won't be getting up to $14,000 per home. You may be getting a lower amount. The state has the discretion at setting that. I think that would be challenging for them to do because those figures have been so widely publicized of the up to amounts, but they are up to amounts. They are not guaranteed. So the state is currently figuring out how they're going to implement that program and run that program pursuant to the Department of Energy guidance. But we have Energy Smart has received many calls of homeowners asking about those programs, saying that they're going to wait for those programs to come out, which there's enough money there that it's worth waiting for. But we're also anticipating that they will go quite quickly, and because we know that they are just a fraction. The funding is just a fraction of the need. Just me speculating here. I think that it's disappointing to realize that that is not a boundless pot of money. But I think that it is possible that even if it is sort of a flash in the pan in terms of the incentives, that it will kickstart and show the demand for this type of support. And then it would be a question of, okay, Colorado State Legislature, okay, voters of Boulder County, is this something that we want to see, supported more? And what is the revenue raising mechanism to accomplish that? So I'm disappointed that it's not going to be it's not going to serve as many homeowners as would meet the need, but I am hopeful that it will kickstart and encourage some more discussions around, okay, that went quick. How do we put something in place that actually meets the need, particularly for our low-income homeowners?
Any questions or comments from any of the other staff members?
I'm good, Melody.
Well, thanks for giving me that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I wonder if you could speak quickly to any of the non-incentive strategies that the town of Nederland might be able to pursue, because funding especially is something that we're short on, but we
Right.
have done it in the past and it's definitely worked, and it's something we'll do again if we get the opportunity. And like we said, we already are working on some of those code changes, but what are maybe some other things you see a small town municipality could pursue that could help us along this kind of goal for the county?
Yeah, for sure. Really good question. And that's like Boulder County has more funding, Boulder County government, has more funding to apply to this strategy than say the town of Nederland does, but we are still like orders of magnitude away from having enough funding to actually like solve these problems with funding. So we are also looking, it's also very critical for us to look at the non-incentive strategies. I think of which there's a lot of work to be done there. I mean, certainly building the individual will, the political will, the business will to make this transition to electrify our buildings. All of the movement building and communications and talking to your neighbors that is involved in building a movement. That is a very critical component. One of the ones on the next page to the table of contents that we didn't quite get to is energy as a service. So traditionally, we buy our furnaces and we own them. There is a model where a third party owns the furnace, and you basically rent it from them, and you pay for having, or I should say furnace, I should say heating system, in this case a heat pump, and you pay for the heating. You don't pay for the equipment. That model works particularly well for commercial and multifamily, and it takes away the upfront cost. So then you just have an ongoing cost of having heat delivered to you, and that equipment is managed, warranty, maintenance, all of that happens by a third party. But it takes all of that upfront cost off the building owner and puts it on the third party. Definitely supporting financing solutions. The Public Utilities Commission are currently considering tariff on-bill financing for Xcel Energy, and that is going to be something that is coming. So supporting that, which is maybe not an Sustainability Advisory Board thing, but that's that. And like when that is available, once that gets established, promoting that as a mechanism for homeowners to, again, defray that upfront cost of high efficiency and all electric equipment, and then that the payment for that stays on your utility bill. So if you did what I did with my last home, which was put in a heat pump and then sell my house 2 months later, I paid for that whole heat pump. And it turns out I was really excited. I was like someone's totally going to buy this house because it has a heat pump. Turns out the buyer didn't care. But I paid for the whole thing, and they get a new heating system. That is a disincentive for most people to make that type of investment in their home. With on-bill financing, the payment stays with the utility account, stays with the home. So if I had access to on-bill financing in that scenario, I could have financed the heat pump and not paid the upfront cost. And then the new homeowner who's benefiting from the new heating system would have picked up the remaining payments when I sold the home. So promoting things like that. General insulation and air sealing, a lot of which can be DIY. That is step number one to all of this. It helps with your, if you're on propane or methane for heating, or any source for heating, having your home be well insulated and air sealed. Again, many of those things can be DIY projects. Is step one and is foundational. In all instances, it improves your efficiency and reduces your greenhouse gas emissions. So there's more there, but I know I'm already over time. But maybe that's, if you all would be interested, I would be happy to come back and do either a presentation or a working session together on digging into that specific question and what are those strategies, and how could the town and how could the Sustainability Advisory Board engage in those.
Thank you. And thanks for being here and attending our meeting and giving us all this info. And so you said eventually this document will be something that the county will, release and we'll be able to review. And
yep, that's right. Yeah. And also don't hold your breath. There's nothing particularly like, there's nothing in there that's going to be like the light shines down from above and like this is it, and if we do this we're saved. It's a collection of strategies that probably all of you could or have already thought of, with a little more detail and context around what it might take to implement them in Boulder County. I'm gonna, if you're looking for this to have the answers for you, I'm gonna temper your expectations. We'll let you know in 20 years when we figure it out. Well, you'll know in 20 years when you figure it out the solution to this puzzle, but we're all in it together, and this is sort of an inventory of what could or might happen that would get us there. But yeah, it should be, I would say within the next month, we will have this ready to share.
Great, thank you. Any other last questions? Hearing none, we thank you for joining us, and you can sign off or stay on, whatever you'd like to do. And we'll move on to the next thing on our agenda.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. And like I said, I gotta go babysit my niece and nephew. But anytime you want me back, just say the word, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Zach.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I
Yeah,
just
like-
wanted to add one fun on that. The other municipalities we're all getting together to discuss these strategies and how we might implement those. So there will be more to come there too about what's actually tangibly possible on the encouraging people, not the pushing for these things, and how we might approach that messaging.
Perfect. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is to talk with the different department heads about what they're maybe currently doing in regards to sustainability in town operations, and any questions we might have for them, and maybe finding ways that we can support Public Works and Town Hall and these different entities of town Parks Department in increasing their sustainability efforts overall. I didn't get any main real topics for this from sub members. Does anybody, well, first let's have the department heads introduce themselves and maybe tell us anything you might know that you're currently doing for sustainability or things you've thought about doing. So Nikki, do you want to go first?
Sure. You're gonna have to forgive me, all y'all. I've been in my office since 5:30 this morning, and I got my final report for the GOCO grant at Barker Meadows completed and submitted today, but I am exhausted. So forgive me if my brain's not 100%. So the Nederland Parks Department is in charge of all of the town's recycling, including our bear cans from the different facilities. We also attempted for a while to take charge of the C&D program with the help of the building department, and that was kind of a failed attempt. We keep track of daily recycling totals that come out of our bear cans, and then of course weekly totals that come out of both the community center and different town staff locations that we recycle from. What else do we do? We not only do we keep track of these totals, we also try and figure out ways to better the knowledge from different town departments. Specifically right now, we're having trouble with the police department because it's not a police department, it's just the police department building, which has been occupied by various different sheriffs who apparently have no idea what a recycling container is. And so we're facing a lot of contamination. I think one of the real challenges for our parks department has been the kind of disintegration of the composting program, and I'm looking forward to being able to compost things like paper towels and different types of papers, because we're seeing a lot of waste develop because of that, and unfortunately don't really have a better plan yet. I'm hopeful to see something maybe local, or perhaps the long-term solution would be to bring back the program the way that it was. Another one of the challenges is that even when we are composting, now we have all these compostable bags that aren't compostable anymore, and a lot of different locations. Ways that, what else could we do? What else can the Parks Department do? Leah and myself and Britt were in a meeting today with some of the other Boulder County resource fellas, and to restart the C&D program, if we can support that, if we can find capacity for that, then in the Parks Department, then we would potentially do that. At this time, my staff is pretty, I mean, we're running every day, but it looks like hopefully with the approval of the 2024 budget as it stands right now in very early draft form, I'm looking at potentially having some temporary employees that would be able to help me do some of our basic chores. That's what I call them, the everydays, the opening the bathrooms and the doing the trash and the pulling weeds. And the temporary employees would relieve my regular year-round employees to potentially be able to do more of these things like the C&D program, and to really try and develop the compost and the recycling for town staff and for the public. That's all I've got right now, I think. I think so.
Thank you so much. I think I personally have seen that you do a lot of work around the area of trying to make things environmentally friendly as much as possible. So we appreciate you for that.
Chipeta Park is 100% chemical free. So FYI, for those of you that didn't know that, Chipeta Park, we use chicken poop, or DPP, dehydrated poultry product, to fertilize. We use either weed pulling, or we use vinegar Epsom salt mixes with weed killing and that kind of thing. So I do my best to keep Chipeta Park 100% chemical free, so that my goal has always been that kids can roll in the grass and not worry about what kind of rash they're gonna come up with, unless they're allergic to grass. So yeah, we do our best to plant native. We're constantly xeriscaping, or high and dry gardening. I only plant native plants in my garden beds. The DDA does some of their own things, but in my garden beds, when I'm creating a new bed, those beds are planted with 100% native. Most of the time pollinator plants, but we do at the Gercio Barker Meadows project, we put in a lot of trees and all native things. Unfortunately, when the grass seed mix came to us, it's native grasses, but some of the flowers were native to the California mountains, close but not quite. It looked really pretty this year, but those flowers probably aren't going to come back up next year, just because we're going to be starting to mow and trying to reclaim that field as a grassy field, so like I said, the grasses that were planted there were native. But we do try to reduce our water usage all around town. We're constantly encouraging others to do the same, teaching people about what's a weed and what's a flower. There's a lot that goes on. Thanks, Melody, for reminding me of how much there's more to sustainability than just trash. And for instance, what we did, the materials that we put on our trails and things like that, those, and even streets, those materials, they can be more environmentally friendly. We really try hard not to use a lot of chemicals, of course, on our snow removal operations. We try to, be as friendly as we possibly can be, because whatever I do affects Andrew. So we do try to remember not just what's downstream, but also our coworkers and our community. So I think that's all. Maybe there's more. Melody, you can remind me if there's more.
Uh, does anybody have any questions about parks and trash and such?
I guess I would just, Nikki, you're in the day-to-day. None of us are. I mean, where have you seen opportunities for us as a town to be more sustainable from your point of view?
This year, the disintegration of the compost project program was really very tragic. I think we're seeing so much waste coming into our cans and just blowing around town that could potentially be composted and instead is just now trash. That was really tragic. Another thing that I've had a ton of complaints about this year is weeds and weed pulling and I don't have this year. There was no way I was going to have a dedicated weed puller on my staff when we had the projects going on that we had. And so unfortunately, at one point in time I had to we had to pull in a company to come in and spray some areas that had gotten incredibly bad. So, the 10 years ago when I started with the town, or 9 years ago when I started, I can't remember. Anyway, when I started with the town, I was almost inundated with volunteers helping and people coming in and pulling weeds and helping out at the parks. And the last year that Frozen Deca Days happened at Chipeta was 2015. And I had the whole Rotary Club showed up to help me clean up from after Frozen Deca Days and those kinds of things. And unfortunately, this year, last year we had 10 people, at least 10 people for every weed pull. This year I had 2. It's and so just the volunteer level of commitment in the town community as a whole has kind of went downhill. And so that's been unfortunate for me, but it's also fortunate that we created, the town of Nederland created a parks department, because now we do have dedicated staff to try and take care of some of the slack that the lack of volunteers has left. I think a big thing is to, I've been here for 14 and a half hours today. And I know Josh is at a conference and he's been here all day and Andrew's been here all day. The dedication level from your staff, from your town staff is strong and it's intense. I'm over budget in my overtime budget for the year already. Because my staff loves this town as much as I do. And so when you're asking us what kind of programs or what kind of what can you do for, or what more can we do? I would just put a note of caution on that staff we're running hard right now and doing everything that we can do. And to add another program or a project without a plan for maintenance and staff and how we can actually tackle this with staff that's already pretty spread thin. I would say I would definitely put that note of caution on that. I personally have just been shooting down projects left and right because my staff doesn't have capacity. I mean, every time I end a project, I'm already 2 weeks behind on the next one. So I would say that anything that you do, make sure that you or consider have a real plan for maintenance. And who's gonna be the community champion? Who's gonna lead it? And then not just like a short-term plan, but what about when that community champion is not there anymore? Because then it does fall on staff shoulders. So you really have to think of the long term and the what ifs.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's also one of the reasons why when we set those goals for the BOT, that was something that we worked with you on, and you're like, no more new projects, no more new projects, please. Can
Yep.
we just stabilize?
Yep,
And
I need Parks Department and now I know Streets is feeling the same way. We need a couple of years to catch up, to check some of those boxes, Nicole, as you've heard me say 1,000 times in those meetings.
Oh,
We
yeah.
need to check these boxes. I've had projects hanging over my head. This Gercio Field project that I just submitted the final report for today. I started writing that grant with others in 2018. So that was a 5-year project that I finally got to check a box on. Not before we started writing the grant for the rink, and not before I have to open the rink for the season, and just all of these different things. So it is really important to me to give not just myself, but my staff some breathing room. And I have seen it time and again where, for instance, the skate park, I love that park. I love it. But if you read the maintenance plan, it talks about how many hours of volunteer time that park should take to run and operate. And I haven't had a volunteer there all summer. So, and then it talks about how many different things need to happen at that park in order for it to have its actual maintenance plan completed. How many different projects require skilled labor time. So every time we lose a staff member, we lose someone who's been trained to do something, whether it's skate park or playground maintenance or water treatment or grading a street. So losing our employees is, it's hard on us. So the wage increases that we're all kind of seeing right now are helpful, definitely, but caution about putting too much on the shoulders of our staff.
Thanks for that, Nikki.
Anyone
Awesome.
else?
Also, Nikki, you'll be happy to know that we should have full composting services up and running again by the end of the year. We're getting a fully local in-vessel composting unit at the transfer station by end of year. So at least that one hopefully will be solved.
Yay! I'm tired of throwing stuff away that shouldn't be thrown away. It's terrible.
Same.
And we just got to teach them to use the right kind of bags. Don't use those hefty bags with your compost.
Well, it sounds like what you guys need is, staff capacity, to be able to achieve some of the goals we already have as a town. So
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now, and especially with the potential approval of the baby draft, budget for the, for 2024, I mean, I feel like we're doing okay, right? I feel like the goals that have been set forth for the Parks Department between BOT and ProSab are achievable. But the thought of adding more when we already get stuff that just comes down the pipe at us, right? It's just a daily, something breaks at town hall, gotta go fix it. Oh, the visitor center bathroom's clogged. Oh crap. You know, just those types of things. So it's just like I feel like what we have on our plate right now is achievable, and I'm hesitant to want to add more or to even think about more when I feel so good about the path that we're on.
yeah, that makes sense. Does anyone who's not on SAB that's here, either from the public or anyone else from town, have any comments about Parks Department before we move on? hearing nothing, thank you, Nikki, for being here. Thank you for putting in another long day with us for the town of Nederland. And we'll continue on.
Thanks for having me. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, you guys. I really appreciate that you guys are doing everything that you're doing, and I am going to head home. This town holds my heart, and I can't help but be a glutton for punishment. But yep, I'm done today.
Absolutely understood.
Thanks for everything, Nikki.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I do. I think I have the best job in town. Sorry, Andrew. Sorry, Josh, but I think I have the best job in town most days. All right. Take care, you guys. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, Nikki.
All right. So moving on, utilities, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew Bliss with utilities. I don't know if my camera's working here. I guess just quick overview. You probably know, but just in case you don't, our utilities team is a pretty small team of 4 people. We operate pretty much everything relating to water in town, a drinking water treatment facility, a water distribution system, including 3 tanks. I'm sorry, 4 tanks. And on this wastewater side, we operate a sewer collection system and a wastewater treatment plant at Barker Reservoir. We work 7 days a week and are on call 24/7 for water and sewer emergencies. In terms of what we're working on, in terms of sustainability, I think we're always looking at reducing energy usage and chemical usage, especially because those are significant costs for us. And so by reducing those, we can reduce costs for the town. And we've had some great success recently at our wastewater plant of pushing our plant to do more biological treatment, use less chemicals for that treatment, and use less electricity in the form of blowers. We operate 25 horsepower blowers that blow air into basins to help with aerobic treatment. And we're using those a little bit less right now and are seeing still really good numbers leaving the plant. So that's been great. We have an operator, Chris Caligaris, who's connected with the Rural Water Association. He started working with someone from the Rural Water Association on an energy audit. They have experience specifically looking at energy usage for utilities and looking at not just capital improvements that you can do, but also operational changes you can do to reduce energy usage. And we just set up, Leah reached out to take a look at our operations as well. So we'll be doing a tour with her, and I'm sure she's going to be a huge help for us as we continue to look at our energy usage. In terms of things to work on moving forward, I learned a lot through Leah, just talking to Leah when we see each other, and then also attending at a previous meeting. One, we heat our drinking water treatment plant with natural gas, totally open to look at, capital improvement planning to look at getting away from that. We also use natural gas for a generator in Big Springs, but I don't think that would be an easy conversion, nor is that really a huge use. That generators there is mostly just for emergencies. But I think the water plant heating might be a good option to get away from natural gas there. Also, I learned at your previous meeting, I just always assumed that all of our electricity use was kind of offset, and Leah has been trying to educate me on this. Totally open to, what we can do with our electricity, and really, this is something that talked with Miranda as well. So more Miranda than me, but totally in support of if there's something else we can do in terms of electricity purchasing to make that more sustainable. Biosolids has been discussed. The board asked our engineer to do a study on creating Class A biosolids. So it's where we take the bacteria we grow at the wastewater plant and treat it to a point where you can basically you can use those solids for anything, for gardening. It's treated enough that's safe to use for any type of residential gardening. The options were very expensive, $2 million. Would also involve a lot more of staff time. We're kind of focusing on basics right now. We have a lot of fresh staff, so it wasn't a good time for us to really take on a whole nother treatment system. In the interim, I have been looking into options with A1 Organics. They create something called biocompost, where they accept biosolids and mix it with other feedstock, I think you might call it, and create a compost. So it's not even considered biosolids anymore, but they create a compost there, and that can be used for any kind of type of residential use as well. It would not limit, it wouldn't get rid of the truck trip down the hill, but it would. We do have the option of bringing our biosolids to them, picking up a load of this biocompost, and having that available. I need to do some more research on that, but I think the cost, if we brought it down ourselves and brought it up ourselves, the cost would be similar to what we pay now for hauling our compost to farmland in eastern Colorado. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, this is more on the social and economic side of things, and the board has made this strategic focus, is developing physical water storage, drinking water storage. We do not have a lot of raw drinking water storage. We draw water from Middle Boulder Creek. We have 2 small settling ponds, but if anything were to happen, such as a wildfire with bad water quality in terms of runoff coming down, we would really struggle to meet our demand. And so I am a huge advocate for us continuing to protect our raw water supply, really for the sustainability of our town, because I've attended some wildfire meetings, and really, I don't think any amount of wildfire mitigation will really protect the full extent of our watershed. And so I think we need to become prepared for runoff from wildfires. So those are some highlights. Happy to answer any questions or discuss other ideas or suggestions.
So Andrew, what is the solution for the raw water resiliency there? What would that look like?
There's there's several options. The town has old wells. So and the town has conditional water rights that we need to apply to the state next year to defend those. And as part of that, the town's water rights attorneys and engineers hired by the town are looking at lots of different options. But there's a few options. There's a few low hanging fruit. Long term, the town has a decreed reservoir called Nederland Reservoir. I think it's from the 1970s of damming the creek and creating a reservoir there. That wouldn't provide a lot of resiliency from runoff because it's right on the channel. But the town does have old water wells that might be a way to kind of have some emergency backup with a little bit of filtration through the ground. The town also installed a riverbank filtration system. It's basically like a concrete vault that has different layers of gravel in it to provide a little bit of filtration. And it was supposed to have a pipe connected to the pump station, but it was never connected. But we're actually going to be bringing a contract to the board soon to hire a contractor to help us finish that up. So lots of different options, and then there's also treatment options of water treatment technologies to help you treat for it. That would not help if there was ever a severe drought where we didn't have enough water to pull for. But lots of different options, some easier than others. And the town is looking into lots of different options now.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any questions? So Andrew, I know that we have been looking at moving to this grade A for a while, and that's why the study was done. How many years out would something like that, like what's a feasible timeline for being able to move to something like that?
I think what I suggested to the board was let's have we have all new staff really focusing on back to basics. Like everyone during COVID, we fell behind on a lot of things, and so we're going back to basics and really focusing on maintaining and sustaining our system. So the preference would be let's focus 2023, 2024 on the basics, and let's look at 2025 for evaluating biosolids further. I think the recommended technology options that JVA identified cost about $2 million. And so I think in 2025 we need to have a serious conversation of how do we fund that, and all the options require a lot of heat to treat to that level. And I think I have to go back and double check, but I know at least some options use natural gas to heat to provide heat for the additional treatment. So I think we should evaluate it again in 2025 is my suggestion.
Yeah, and just to add to that, when we did discuss it as a board, one of the, I guess, arguments for it has always been, well, we can always sell it as compost. And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but not only was there a misconception in terms of how much it would produce, but then also whether or not we were going to be able to produce revenue. Adequate revenue, like to pay it back. You
Right.
probably refresh my memory.
Yeah. So I don't have it in front of me, but I think it would not produce a lot. I think it was something like 35 cubic yards of material, and which would definitely be enough. I think it would for residents that want to pick up a bag or two, but it wouldn't be something like we'll be providing it to companies. And then two, yeah, my understanding from other utilities that do this, they basically give it away. There's not really a big market for it. So in terms of financial planning, I don't think it would be wise to expect a lot of revenue coming back.
Right, which is fine. Like, and if that's the
Right.
direction we choose to go in, that's great. But we need to anticipate that this is not a revenue generating activity, as it's at least how it was kind of promoted to me initially. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Oh, good call.
All right. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. It's nice to meet you virtually.
Good to meet
And
you.
you can feel free to sign off. I hear you've had a long day as well.
I'll stick around for Josh. I won't leave him hanging, but then I'll sign it off after that. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Josh.
Thank you. I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Joshua Davis. I'm a 15-year Netherlands resident. I recently took over the streets department as supervisor. A lot of what I'm learning about at this conference that I'm at now is sustainability as far as what we use for our de-icer and things to help the roads during the winter time. Looking into organic options such as beet juice was one we were learning about today. And just other things that we could use in place of mag chloride or any of the other stuff that would, ultimately destroy the ground and get into our water system. As far as like that, just taking over right now, heading into winter, I guess that would be my main focus with sustainability is just looking at what our options are to keep the roads clear without impacting the environment as much.
That's great to hear that you're
I know
able
she's been
to.
going for a long time on that one.
Chris, your mic is on. Anyway.
My apologies, everyone.
No
I was
worries.
talking to my dog, so she's been chewing on a tendon for a long time tonight.
Any questions for streets?
Hi, Josh. So I guess so you've been for 15 years, and congratulations, by the way, on your recent promotion. And so in addition to the kind of the other things that you've been learning about, beet juice or whatnot, which is really kind of interesting to think about over the course of your 15 years, and now in your streets position, where do you see, not necessarily in adding new projects, but in just your day-to-day work where there can be an opportunity for increased sustainability?
I'd have to think about that for a minute. I guess I haven't really looked at that angle of it yet.
Sure, no problem. And that's okay if you don't have an answer tonight.
I would definitely have to think about that. I haven't looked at it from that perspective yet. Sorry about that.
I know one of the things on my mind is, how is that? And I know you're new to the position as well. So, but how the road base is doing in Big Springs that was put down before they paved it, the kind of polymer based road based stuff, how that was doing. Is that something we're still going to use in other places? And do we have any more information now that we've been using it for a couple years on if there's any negative effects to using it?
Um, I guess like I said, I haven't looked into any negative effects of using the road base. We also use a recycled asphalt, which is just kind of exactly what it sounds like. Just asphalt ground up and used to fill in roads. It adheres to itself a little better than just the road base does, but a lot of the road base is used to build up the streets in order to crown them and grade them properly for drainage.
Anyone else, anything on their mind as far as streets department?
We probably don't, this is Maddie. I don't know if the sidewalks are managed by the streets department, but there's some options out there from, I think it's Holcomb, and then a couple of other distributors for concrete, for lower carbon concrete, which is kind of interesting without impacting the strength. And I've heard some feedback as far as curing time on projects I've used it on or spec'd it on. It's still a newer product, but just something to potentially explore from a emissions point of view. And then my second thought would just be potentially managing dust control for air quality, and then also road smoothness for vehicle efficiency. And then that could come down to an economic sustainability piece as far as vehicle costs and user costs for keeping roads in good, the benefit of keeping roads in good shape.
Thanks, Maddie. That's helpful input. If nobody has anything further, thank you, Josh, for joining us. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you in your role, and looking forward to seeing what this winter brings. And hopefully, you guys will all be treated well and stick around, and it'll all go smoothly.
Yeah,
If there's anything that the sustainability board can do to support you, reach out to us or reach out to Leah, and we'll see what we can do, if it's like help researching materials or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I guess I've just never really considered that part of the job going into it. I would definitely, I'm open to any suggestions and also any input as far as what I can do to help out, for sure.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being here. I think the last town department is town hall, and I know Miranda couldn't be here. I don't know if Macy, you have anything to speak to?
Macy, are you there?
If not, that's all right. I know that one thing we did do a couple years ago was work on the little postcards that are sent out. Everybody's water bill is made with recycled paper. And a few other things in town hall to reduce paper use and water use. And I know they've done a lot. Also not this past year, I don't think, but years previous, to increasing efficiency in the building, because it is an old building. And so when they did the remodel, they did some work on making that work better. And then the visitor center as well, they worked on energy efficiency, and it's keeping heat.
Yeah, and Melody, I know that Peter's working on getting historical certification for the town hall building so that they can now hopefully get some grants and do another renovation and hopefully increase the energy efficiency even more.
Yay. I know it desperately needs it.
Yeah, it's like it's like slanting sideways right now. So
All right. So I think that's all on town stuff or on town operation stuff. Thanks everyone for joining us. So we can move on to sustainability coordinator updates. Anything you want to update us on, Leah? And then the next thing after that is the community accelerated mobility project. So you can just move on to that when you're done with other updates.
Sure, thanks, Melody. Yeah, major updates are, I think most of you were present for the Partners in Energy Gap Analysis at the last meeting. They sent over some more supplemental materials, but we'll wait to further discuss those goals and the path moving forward when Miranda can join us at the next October SAB meeting. We had our electric vehicle ride and drive event at the September 17th farmers market. Turnout wasn't great for that. Apparently there was some football that day that made people not come to the market or this event. But of the people that showed up, there was a good handful of people who were really interested in the electric vehicles, took some long test drives, asked a lot of questions. So I would say quality over quantity for that event. I'll come back to the camp grant. As Zach and I were mentioning during his presentation, the IRA funds have been released to the Colorado Department of Energy. And so Peter will be promoting the handy guide that Partners in Energy put together for that so that we can advertise that to our residents. Also, Peter added the new community solar partner Pivot Energy to our website so we can start promoting that as well to help us get towards that renewable energy goal through community solar. And then Melody, I meant to ask, were you able to attend the Solar United Neighbors rooftop solar launch event last month?
No, I was not.
Okay. So we still have a couple more launch events for that. So I'll have more updates once hopefully Excel is in the public spotlight to answer some questions. I think we'll wait to really promote that program until some of those questions are answered, but that will be coming up this winter. And then we'll talk about the MEM capstone here in a bit too, but just a quick summary of the Community Accelerated Mobility Project. It's a fund for a number of mobility projects. The one that we settled on was for an EV car share, which we've been trying to get for quite some time. And we're just waiting to hear from Colorado Car Share about whether or not they're going to lead that application process. A number of municipalities have expressed interest in a regional application. It seems that really none of us are prepared to do that lift ourselves. There is a 10% match required for that grant. So, like I said, Nederland wouldn't go for that grant individually, but if Colorado Car Share and Boulder County are willing to sponsor that, we'd like to participate. And so, open to discussion among the SAB members and any concerns about that. It might require a small financial contribution, which probably wouldn't be really significant. We'd have maybe one car up here as part of the whole program. And unfortunately, I don't have further details on what that would look like. So that might have to be a quick email to all of you later once that's decided. But any thoughts or questions about that?
My first thoughts are that it sounds like a great opportunity for us if we can get that support in the application process and the match by collaborating with others and such. So I'm in full support of it.
Great. Yeah, and we're hoping that Boulder County could also possibly cover our match. I'll wait to ask for that once we know we're moving forward. Anyone else?
Sorry, Leah, can you repeat the question? I had to go put my 9-year-old to bed.
Oh, no worries. I was just, did you hear about the grant in general, or do you want me to repeat that part?
Yeah, I heard about the grant. What was the question?
Oh, just if there are any questions or concerns, knowing that I don't have the full information about what that would require, it would probably be a pretty small lift and a small financial contribution, if any, for the EV car share regional grant application. So
Okay.
any questions or thoughts?
No, no concerns, no questions. I just wait to hear more.
Okay. Great. Those are all of my major updates, but I would like to discuss the MENV capstone as well. Is it okay to move on to that, Melody? I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I just wanted to know, do you need us to make a motion to say that we recommend you continuing to pursue and apply for that grant?
yes, I think so. That's probably a good idea. It does need to be, I think, approved by the BOT. Oh no, that's the MENV capstone. Yeah. It's due October 17th, I believe, maybe 27th. So we do have a little time, but yeah, if there's approval to at least pursue that, I think a motion would be great.
So I'll make a motion to apply for that grant. You know, granted, all those factors need to fall into line. Since the application is due 10/17 before our next meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And we will call a vote. Nicole,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Maddie,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So go ahead, move on.
Great, thanks. So for the capstone project, that's coming up pretty soon as well. The info session gave a few helpful guidelines, and then we can open it up to discussion on what the proposal might look like. But the suggestion was that a strong application would include a multidisciplinary team. So not just focusing on energy or, say, urban sustainability. It would be something that's like a mix of urban sustainability, energy, and policy was one example. However, Miranda confirmed that we only have the budget to probably pay one person. So we might have to make sort of a broad proposal that might touch a few areas, but that could be handled by one person instead of a team of a few students. And they do have a liaison who can review our proposed ideas before we create the proposals and give us guidance on what we should go for and basically how good our ideas are and which ones are worth pursuing. And so if we could flesh out a couple strong ideas that I could run by them before creating the proposal, I think that would be fantastic. And I think we also have to develop some kind of committee or small group that's working on this. Melody, I know you worked on it last year, and maybe you took the lead on that, but we're wondering, how that might look in terms of a team to complete that application. So actually I'll stop there. Any thoughts on that so far, or people who would want to be part of that team? Which would include Miranda as well, who's not here.
Yeah, Leah, I was trying to dig up my email, but had thrown out an idea via email I wanted to bring back to the group
Oh, yes, thank you.
today. Forward thinking, I was also looking at the focus areas of the master's program and was wondering if there was something around economic and environmental sustainability, and climate risk, specifically for towns that are driven, whose economies can be driven by tourism. And so maybe it's something around like a risk assessment based on, risk assessment for the economy based on potential impacts of climate change. I know that's a lot of different things, so hopefully it's somewhat clear.
Yeah. And I think you had another idea in there too, but to add to that, Miranda and I, in discussing this previously, sort of settled on something that is related to sustainable tourism, specifically because we have that Reimagined Destinations project going, and in order to look at possible revenue generators for the town as part of that sustainability assessment. So that kind of, I think, goes in line with your idea, Maddie.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Leah, can you remind me of when the completion of this project will be? It'll be like at the end of the semester next year, right?
Yeah, so proposals are due October 27th. We'll be notified of if we're a finalist or not by December 1st. Then it's a 9 to 10 month period to be completed by November 2024.
Okay, so it'll be the following.
Like a year and a
Yeah, I
quarter.
mean, I would just be a +1 for the sustainable tourism thing, and anything around sustainable revenue generation. Those are things that we're going to have to tackle heading into next year. Getting the report in November, I mean, that still works for us to kind of do some decision making, but even if it helps to inform our decision making for 2025, that still works.
Anyone else? And we don't have to have more than one idea. We could just hone in on one around sustainable tourism. One thought I had too was, especially given the emphasis on equity, that maybe there could be a piece in there too. I'm not sure how, but could be good to talk about including people in sustainable tourism that might not necessarily have access, or yeah, I'm not sure. That's not a fully fleshed idea, but yeah, something around equity could strengthen our proposal a bit.
So, Leah, do you mean like access to like our trails and parks and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, and maybe like improving public transit to enjoying our outdoors. I mean, I know we have shuttles and things, but being in Boulder County, there is that, it's kind of limited to people who are commuting from the Boulder, Denver area. And I don't know if there's an opportunity to improve access among underserved populations somehow, but maybe that's too far of a stretch from revenue generation.
Well, I mean, just kind of something for you to noodle on. I don't know if this helps, but so we're also going into the multimodal plan, and transportation around, equity and access and ADA accessibility. I know it's going to be a theme that comes out of that. But this idea of accessibility within a sustainable tourism framework, like how do we make our trails more accessible? How do we make you know, one of the things that ProSab is working on is, one of their goals for this year is actually having a connected trails program of some sort. So that, well, it's connected and it feels contiguous. So I don't know if any of those things help, but just trying to give some context for some of the other things that are going on.
Thanks. Yeah. And aren't we improving our sidewalks some way for accessibility this year too? I know that's not related to the trails, but it is related to increased tourism and accessibility.
Yeah, and the increased tourism, we have it's kind of a naughty word. We try to
Oh,
really about maintaining what we have because it's already so much.
right.
And so how do we maintain what we have like in a sustainable way, right? But yeah, we did actually apply for a grant to help help with our with the sidewalks, the crusher sidewalks that are on Second Street, and we did not get approved for that grant, unfortunately. So, but those sidewalks and, anything that goes into the development of that downtown, ADA accessible sidewalks, it's a non-negotiable at this point. We've got to get to it.
Yeah.
I think for the capstone project, as we're working on or honing in on exactly what we might want a group to do, their program has a list of guiding principles by each of the focus areas. And I almost feel like it would be helpful to read those guiding principles and kind of compare like what we might want to get out of it versus those, because it's kind of a win-win for us and then also helping them with their capstone and something they're interested in.
Oh, yes.
But
oh, go ahead.
it seems like they've got 5 guiding principles under the outdoor industry focus area, and it seems like a lot of those are applicable to what we're talking about in terms of promoting outdoor opportunities, but also making sure that looking at the economic impacts of that, both positive and negative, and revenue generation opportunities, and creating policies and things like that. And then equity is also one of the principles too. So I kind of see that as maybe like a guidepost as we're putting something together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so seems like we have a pretty good idea of where this would go. Any other input on sustainable tourism, economic opportunity, capstone project?
I think I liked, all the ideas presented, including, the kind of economic risk analysis. And I wonder if we pass them all off to them. But, I'm fully behind something around sustainable tourism. It's definitely an issue. On that note, I'd love to see something like visitor center merchandise revenue. I'm not sure where it goes right now, but it would be great to see. Does that go fund parks, and open space or something like that? So I'm in support of all the above ideas.
Great. And who here would like to be involved in the drafting?
I'm happy to help out.
I was going to say, I feel like
Mind
Maddie's
writing.
got this kind of somewhat figured out. I was going to nominate, but I was like, oh, maybe that's not a good thing.
That's great. Melody, did you want to participate in this one also, since you helped with last year's, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to help out. I am mostly available in the next few weeks. So I think I can make that happen. I think we have to put together a written proposal, and then at some point we have to put together like a video presentation of sorts as well. At least we did last year. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's great. Okay. On that note too, there is a info session on October 4th that neither Miranda nor I can make. It's at, I will have to look up the time. Maddie, I know that you might not be available during the daytime. It's okay if I email you both later with those details and see if one of you might be able to attend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will follow up about getting that together. Great. I think that's it on my end. Any other questions or anything for me?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to our last action item, which is to approve the meeting minutes. I thought they looked great. I didn't see any issues. Any other staff members? If there are no objections to minutes, I'm looking for a motion to approve them.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
And do we have a second?
Second.
I will second.
We got 2 seconds. Yay. So then I will call the vote. Rich?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. So the minutes are unanimously approved. That's a hard word. Thank you, Nicole, for those. And another item that Miranda sent me is the next 3 meetings we have coming up are dates that possibly have conflicts. November and December we always struggle with because of holidays. And then October, the Art at the Center is happening at the community center, and a series of other things happening. So she recommended that we move our October meeting to either October 18th or October 23rd. So the 18th is a Wednesday, and the October 23rd date is a Monday. They'll start at 6:45 as usual. Does anybody have any objections to moving our October meeting to October 18th, which is the Wednesday before we would normally meet?
I do not have an objection, but I cannot be present for either one of those dates.
Okay.
And I would prefer the week of the 23rd, simply because BOT meeting is on the week before, and depending on what it is, it could be 4 hours long. So
I cannot make the 18th.
so 23rd.
So this is starting to sound. Decision is made.
23rd. 23rd works for me.
So Monday, the 23rd, then, we will meet next. Okay, and then we can get through November and December real quick here. So November falls on Thanksgiving. So she's proposing we meet the next Thursday, since there happens to be an extra Thursday in November, which is the 30th.
That works for me.
Works for me.
I'm with that.
Great. I'm hearing at least 4 of us, so that should be great. And December meeting. It is right near Christmas here. It would be the 28th, which is a few days after. So we could do Monday, December 18th or Wednesday, December 20th. Does anybody have a preference?
I would have a preference for the 18th, just because those last 2 weeks of December is just tough in general.
I can do the 18th. I cannot do the 20th, so I prefer the 18th as well.
Okay, so let's do December 18th. And I will make sure Miranda gets that info back. Any other items? Hearing nothing.
Are these
then
all-
yeah.
Oh, are these all virtual meetings? I know you had asked for some in-person meetings.
It will be determined as Macy takes quorum before each meeting.
Okay.
So I would still like to have in-person meetings personally. That's my personal preference. But if we can only meet virtually, it's better than not meeting. So happy to jump on it. Internet is just always an issue here. So yeah, with that, we can adjourn the meeting at 8:47 p.m.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Good night.